Hi, this is John. This is the first of the week 2 videos for CS 1030, and I hope things are going well. I'm actually recording this before week 2, so I can't see how week 1 went yet, but hopefully hopefully things are going okay, and hopefully we'll be checking up on you so we can try to figure out if things are going okay. So this week we're going to be looking at moving between pseudocode and Scratch, and by that I mean we're going to be looking at writing an algorithm down, understanding an algorithm that's in pseudocode, and then translating that into the Scratch programming language. And Scratch is something that some of you probably have used in other courses before, or maybe on your own. It's sort of it's a programming environment that's designed to be easy to use for beginners, and it's actually pretty cool and powerful behind the scenes, though. So this first video is going to be really short, and all I'm going to do here is do a little review of pseudocode, and then we're going to start talking about Scratch specifically in the next video. So let's talk about this program right here. So we have some pseudocode, and the question is, what is going to be displayed at the end? And I'd like you to take just a minute and pause the video here and figure this out, and then I'll talk through it, and hopefully we came up with the same answer. Okay, so let's talk about what this program is going to display. And really, the only thing we can do, the only thing any of us can do to figure this out is to kind of play the execution of the pseudocode program forward in our heads, or possibly in a mix of in our heads and on paper. So this one's easy enough. We're not going to need to write anything down. So the first line, set limit to 13, is going to make a new variable limit and assign a value 13 in it. Second line sets a variable num to 0. And now we have a while loop. And we looked at while loops in plenty of detail in week 1, but it takes a while to get used to these things. So we're going to spend some more time going over this because I want everybody to be on the same page about how these work before we proceed to actually writing code. So the condition on the while loop is while num is less than limit, and the action is set num to num plus 3, so increment num by 3. That is to say, make the value stored in num bigger by 3 every time we execute this line of code. And then display num at the bottom of the pseudocode program is not part of the while loop. So let's look at what happens. So we start off with the condition being true because 0 is less than 13. So we're going to execute the action, and now num goes from 0 to 3. So the condition is going to stay true for the next several iterations of the loop. And so num is going to, which num started at 0, it's going to go to 3, then 6, then 9, then 12. And so here we're getting close to the limit, so we should think about this, but 12 is still less than 13. So we execute the action again, and now num goes to 15. So 15, it turns out, 15 less than 13 is a Boolean expression or a conditional expression. It evaluates to false. So that drops us out of the while loop without executing the action again, and then we display 15. So hopefully that's the answer you arrived at. If you didn't, that's fine, of course. But what we want to do is practice reading these programs and predicting what they're going to do, because a lot of the act of programming is kind of writing things down while understanding in a different part of our brain what's going to happen when we run it. That's sort of how we do programming. And so this skill of looking at a program and playing through its execution to figure out what it's going to do ends up being really important. So let's look at another example. So here's a similar program. It sets limit to 13, sets num to 0. And now inside of the while loop, the action part is a conditional expression, is a conditional. It's an if then else. And so let's look at what happens here. So the first time through the loop, num is 0. So 0 is less than limit of 13. So the condition is true, and we're going to execute the action. If num is less than 9, that's also true because the expression comes out to 0 less than 9, which turns out to be true. So we're going to do the then part of the loop, and we're going to skip over the else part. So the then part of this loop increments num by 3. So now num is 3. Now we're finished with the selection construct. We're also finished with the action. So we go back and evaluate the loop condition again. So the loop condition now comes out to be 3 less than limit, 3 less than 13. That's true again. 3 is less than 9. So num is going to go back up to 6. So that finishes the second iteration or the second execution of the action part of this while loop. So we go back again to the condition at the top, and now we have 6 less than limit. That's still true. And now 6 is less than 9 is also true. And so num is going to be incremented to 9. And again, we're done with the action. So 9 less than limit 9 less than 13 evaluates to true, so we're going to execute the action again. But this time, 9 less than 9 evaluates to false. 9 isn't less than 9. So we're going to execute the else action for these if then else, and we're going to set num to num plus 2. So num is going to be changed to 11. We're going to display num, and then we're going to go back up, of course, to the top, and we're going to execute this again. And what's going to happen is 11 is less than 13, so we're going to execute the action a fourth time. I think it is. So again, 11 less than 9 is false, so we go to the else part. The num gets incremented by 2 again, so num becomes 13. We display 13, and now we go evaluate the while loop's conditional a final time. 13 less than 13 ends up being false, and we drop out of the while loop. And since that's the end of the program, we finish executing the program. So what would be displayed by this program? It would be 11 and then 13. So now we've looked at these couple of examples. Let's look in the final slide for this lecture section. Let's look at how while loops work. So just to reiterate one more time, the while loop performs the action as long as a condition is true, but if the condition becomes false while executing the action part of the while loop, that doesn't change anything. That doesn't sort of stop executing the while as soon as it becomes false. Rather, the action part of the while loop executes to completion. Then we go back and reevaluate the loop condition. And if it's still false when we get back there, then the loop terminates. So it could even be the case that the loop condition would become false temporarily during the action and then become true again before the action finishes, in which case the loop, once we finish the action, we go back to the condition at the top of the loop, and we would end up executing the loop again. So the condition is only checked after finishing the action and also before the first execution of the action. And that's really important that we sort of get that straight. So if we look at the little pseudocode program at the right-hand part of this slide, we set x to 1, and then we increment x while x is less than 3. And we can see that when x comes out to be 3, the condition 3 less than 3 is false. But it turns out that when we get there with x being 3, we've already displayed 3. So even though that condition became false in a previous loop iteration by setting x to x plus 1, where it goes from 2 to 3, we're still going to display 3, even though that made the loop condition false. Okay, so I hope that was clear. It just sort of takes practice looking at these to sort of understand the dynamics of it. But it's something that we need to do. So we're going to kind of keep harping on this. And that's the end of this segment. Thank you.